think we're about ready to start. So thanks everyone for coming out. There's always a mistake in the presentations I put together, so I put it on the very first slide. So we can get that one right out of the way. It is actually the 16th today. So welcome to everybody. I think we've got a list of attendees. So I think when Ross is putting the minutes together, we've got a list of attendees. Friends of Black Hill acknowledges the Kaurna people and their native rights to country, having over the Adelaide Plains area, including the parks that we work in. We recognise their long and ongoing relationship with their land, their customs and their beliefs, which are just as important to them today as they have been for the thousands of years prior to colonisation. We also pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So, from the work health and safety side of things, pleasingly we haven't had any serious injuries reported out of our group this year. And that's, I guess, a credit to the focus of not only ourselves but also the department on making sure we've got safety at the front of mind when we're working on the park, but also working in places like this. The membership of the group, when we last ran the numbers about 4 weeks ago for the meeting, we were up to 137 members, so we're seeing slow and steady increase in the number of members each year, and I guess the expectation is that growth will slowly continue as well. And I guess there's the usual reminder, if you haven't paid your membership fees, pay up as well. So the membership is there. One of the focuses within the committee, for those who have seen the agenda, is we do focus a fair bit on membership engagement, on our membership. What can we do to encourage people to join us and help out? One of the big strategies over the last couple of years has been the website implementation. So there was a report on that last year and the previous year. So that's has been implemented. It allows for online payments and online donations, and is a wealth of information which we certainly see people accessing the website for more general information. So that's good to see. That positions us for the next few years around being in that space where we've got a website which helps us with membership and databases and those sorts of things. So as the need arises, we obviously get ongoing support, provide ongoing support with training and equipment and those sorts of things. And we've got, certainly all of our project coordinators are aware of this, that these resources are certainly available to help out. And then the other side of it is the ongoing engagement, which again we've done this over the years, ongoing engagement through the regular newsletter, through social media. Yes, we do have a Facebook page, we've got a few other social media accounts. And again, as relevant ongoing community events to promote what we're doing. So we are well and truly engaging our membership. We are, again, as appropriate, seeking to expand that membership into other areas if we can, to, I guess, get some more hands and feet on the ground to help out with the habitat restoration in the 3 parks. So that's a little bit about the membership. The volunteer hours is I guess, certainly for me, it's one of our key things. The volunteer hours that we put into the park is really the building block of everything else that we can make happen as a group. So without people turning up on rainy days or sunny days or hot days to help with the habitat restoration through our projects, we wouldn't have grants, we wouldn't have opportunities to get grants and those sorts of things. So it is really a key part of it. We do have 15 projects running at the moment, 15 volunteer projects. I was talking to a person from another park a couple of months ago, and she said, "Oh, so how many?" She said, "Oh, we've got one project. How many have you got?" I said, "Oh, we've got 15." She nearly fell off, fell over. So there is a lot of work going on around the place. There is obviously, again, it's all on the website. You can see from the website that we do have quite a number of these projects are within Morialta, but we've also got obviously Black Hill behind us and Horsnell Gully as well. So And it's great to see those projects are ongoing. So some of those projects have been going now for 20 or more years. And certainly when you walk around the parks, you can actually, if you've got a bit of a weed eye, you can actually tell when you're crossing between project sites and areas where we don't necessarily work as much. It is great to acknowledge the project coordinators who spend their time planning and organising what's going to go on in their areas, reaching out for resources, organising the people to turn up and all those sorts of things. And this year we've got to round about, as best as our records can show, we'll actually pass the 50,000 hours as a group in terms of on-ground habitat restoration. What we don't count so much is the committee meetings, the promotional activities, some of those other things that go on around the place, which would probably be about 10,000 hours, 15,000 hours, 20,000 hours. If we add all those in, that would be in addition to the work that happens on the ground. So that's quite a huge, when you start to think about the numbers, that not just we put in the last 12 months, but this is, I guess, a recognition of all the work that's been done over the years. We certainly start to see that it's adding up to quite significant things. The slide here is one, I think this went out in one of the newsletters just recently, is one that we use as a committee to look at what's actually going on. And the last few, if I've got a pointer, so certainly through 2020 is the tall one, 2021 is the next one, and this year these numbers were done a couple of months ago, so we're not showing a full year for the last one at the moment. But there is a couple of interesting things happening within the numbers, and I think it reflects how we're going as a group, and so perhaps some of the changing things that what we used to do back here is actually starting to change as our projects mature and develop over time. So the green area there is the hours that we spend on primary weeding. So we've all done this. There's a big pile of blackberry and we go in and perhaps we don't all do blackberries, but we see that big weed front and we tackle that big weed front. And certainly we're seeing a bit of a reduction there in terms of the amount of time that we spend on primary weeding, and I think that's because of a couple of things. That's because we're getting a little bit smarter about how we use our grants. So, and secondly, I guess we're also learning ourselves how to most effectively do some of the primary weeding and where we should be doing that. The yellowy orange area, depending on what colour you think that might be, yellow or orange, is the follow-up work. And obviously, anyone who's heard me talk about bush care, the follow-up work is really important work, because that's where over a number of years we go back and we remove germinating seedlings and stop the flowering and all those things that are so important to getting the bush to come back. And the red bit there is patrolling. So out of all these 50,000 hours that we've put in as a group, we've now got about 100, probably, we haven't done the maps exactly, but we've got 100 or a couple of hundred hectares of park, which are actually really low maintenance in terms of ongoing work. And certainly if you look at some of the areas around Black Hill, some of the areas around Morialta, some of those areas now we really just need to keep an eye on. And we're just keeping an eye on them just to make sure that they're ticking along. So, and I think if we look forward for the group, that will become more and more important as we go along, because the areas that we're talking about now are getting quite large. Overall, it's something like 25% of the parks are within these project areas. So that's quite a significant amount of the parks. Over time, will that get bigger? Yes, it probably will, but it's also fair to say some of the areas that are not in the volunteer project sites are difficult to access because of steep ground or a reasonable distance from a car park and some of those things. So there will probably be a natural limit to what volunteers can do, but certainly continuing those basic principles of making sure we move slowly into new areas, making sure we're doing the follow-up, and making sure we're keeping an eye on what we've already completed are certainly going to be key pillars as we go forward. So the purple area there we had on the previous slide around engagement. So the purple area there is some of the other things that we do as a group. In there is some of the engagement activities, so we're not necessarily weeding, but we're perhaps meeting as a group for other reasons. Also perhaps some of the work around camera trapping and some of those things, camera traps for taking photos, and some of those other things which are not necessarily hands-on, but they're obviously an important part what's going on around the place. So this is our effort as a group. Obviously it's supported by the parks, it's supported by grants and donations that we can use to pay contractors, and we'll talk about some of the dollars and cents that's involved in the grants and donation side of things in a couple more slides. So this is a great effort. It's like I say, I think it does tell us the ongoing story, not just for last year, but it is a bit of a milestone, I think, to be able to say, well, hand on our heart, we've got to 50,000 hours, which is a pretty good milestone. So that's a bit about the restoration project. I did ask the project coordinators to send me a photo of why they do what they do as project coordinators, and I'm going to forget all the names of the little things, but we've obviously got some bone seed, I think it is here, around some stuff in Ghost Tree Gully. We've got some donkey orchids, quite a spectacular display of donkey orchids there. I have forgotten the name of this little fella, but a little fella on the ground, and the big Eucalyptus rubitus or Dalryplianus. And someone sent me a photo of me, so I think they were after some bonus points. But just to I guess reflect on not just what our membership does from a on the ground weeding type thing, but what are some of the things that motivate our project coordinators to be involved in a slightly different role to the day-to-day sort of weeding, and take on that leadership role. And I think, to me, this slide is actually quite an interesting slide to me, because we'll talk next about our key programs, but our key programs are not necessarily why we, I'll include myself in the project coordinator group, why we're involved, because we don't see a chestnut rump leaf wren, we don't see a bandicoot, we do see a couple of big trees, but it is, I think, in reading some of the things that came along with this, it is about that holistic thing about we need the small things, we need the big things. I guess for me, we need we need a community to help us with all this. It's about us all pulling together around all of this. So I just thought I'd put that up as a point of reflection. We do talk about the overall programs and those sorts of things, but these things are, I guess, what's driving our leaders and what's driving our coordinators in all this. So. And it takes all these things to make up the bush. I don't think there's no great headline in all that, but it is about all these things together. So that's a bit about project coordinators. The grant program, the headline here is down the bottom. It was about $33,000 spent on grants this year. We've got got grants running across all three parks. So we try not to leave anybody out in this process. It is around habitat restoration, supporting the volunteer projects. Again, that key thing around the volunteer projects form the hub of what we're doing. So within those projects, we've had some grant work happening. We've also had habitat restoration in some of the areas adjacent to volunteer projects. So again, this is where we can expand away from our project side a little bit and say, well, there is other work that we can do. We continue to do some of the single weed focus type grants. And you may have seen in the last newsletter the bit about the Morialta program is running again at the moment. I was out on Park last week and bumped into Andrew, who was out there, one of our contractors who was out there going out to check out all the Morialta spots, all the non-Morialta spots. And again, he's found, through his work and his diligence, he's also found a small new outbreak, which will now be put onto the maps. And again, we can carry on that work into the future. So the grants are happening. I guess the main point here is we do try to involve all the parks, and we do try and touch on all the volunteer projects as we can and as we're able to. So the donation side of things, I just mentioned a couple of slides ago the three key programs. So I've just pinched a couple of pictures out of some of the things, but the bandicoots, thanks to Kristen for the photo. So this is one off the website for the little bandicoot. We shouldn't forget them. The free of tree stuff, freeing the olives around the gum trees and the chestnut rump heath wren. We've certainly been able to activate this program in the last 12 months. We've always had a donations program. We've been doing some gentle promotions around donations. We've agreed to make sure when we spend donation money, we're thinking about a particular site not just for 1 year, but looking forward. So again, going back into that idea of if we start here, what are we going to need to do in the next few years to follow up in that area? We've also had a couple of donations around specific sites, and where we can, we'll accommodate those, because obviously that can be a really important driver for people making donations. So we can align some of those activities to some of the sites, which is good. And the number there, $11,000, is the 12-month figure for donations that we've received. So that's a bit on the donation side. So we've had these programs going for quite a while. And like I say, we're now starting to see the activity. And you would have seen in my President's messages some of the briefings around what we're doing in this space. So where does that leave us? Well, it really leaves us with, I guess, what are we going to do next year? So next year, looking forward to 2023, we've obviously got the volunteer projects, and we will continue to support those, because like I say, they're the ongoing thing. The donation side of things, you will see is continuing to talk actively about what we're doing with donations. Maybe not so much individual donors, but certainly looking towards recognising donors, looking towards explaining to people how we're spending that money. We will continue to look at grants where we can. Grant writing is a process in itself, and we are sharing that as much as we can around amongst the committee. So if anyone has a real big bent for grant writing, please perhaps come and see me. The other thing that's popped up as well, and Richard's here tonight, is we've formed a partnership with JBS&G, which is an environmental management group, as part of their philanthropic program. So they approached us earlier in the year and said, how could we work together? So there's really two key pillars in this. One is they're going to be offering us mapping services, which at the moment will focus around the Amber's Gully site. For those with an IT reference, this is about developing some fairly simple maps of Amber's Gully, which we can use going forwards, which are up to date. Because again, some of the maps that we're using, maps do tend to go out of date after a while. Along with a bit of in-kind support on the ground for habitat restoration in Amber's Gully. And in addition to that, a significant donation for work in Amber's Gully as well, in regards to the Free a Tree program. This is something new, it's something that's a bit different for us, so we are stepping through this process slowly. But again, we're able to link it back in to those key areas that I've already spoken about a couple of times already tonight, the existing programs. Looking forward, what can we do? How can we grow some of the areas that we're working in? So, and then what we hope to be able to do again is similar to what we've done this year, where we've been talking about our spring program, although spring's still not quite here yet. We're looking to try and formulate an autumn program of works and then a spring program of works. And that makes it easier for us as a committee to try and manage things, because we've got chunks of work that can happen at distinct periods of time. But just to give you a bit of an idea of the list, and it's not called the list, but that's perhaps what we should be calling it. When we start to look at all the different things that we could be doing, we've got a list of about 39 different things that's been pulled together this year in terms of various tasks and projects and stuff that we could be looking at donations, looking at grants, looking at all those opportunities. So we've certainly got a lot of ideas. It's a matter of trying to match the resources to the ideas, where these are what we see as some of the higher priority items or actions that we could be taking within the park, which are outside of the volunteer projects, or sorry, outside of what we would normally get volunteers to be doing. So most of this involves contractor work, or perhaps work on steeper ground or chemicals or some of those things. So we do now have a list, and this, like I say, we used a similar list to this to get the spring program up and running. The list is becoming a bit longer now, and I guess once we get to the December meetings early next year as well, we'll start to look towards, well, now which ones of these are we going to focus our efforts on getting to happen in the autumn. As you can see, there's lots to do, and it's certainly going to keep us busy for a while. So that's a bit about 2023. So I'm happy to take any questions, because the next thing is the Ranger report. Are there any questions? No. So just a big thanks from me for everyone's enthusiasm, ongoing enthusiasm is just as important as well, and certainly all your efforts, either out the front or behind the scenes, to help us achieve some of the results that we're getting. So if there's no questions, I'll hand over to Alira.
Thank you.